Hi, this is David McCann for Elementor 360. This video is about how to create a PDF from an Elementor Pro form. Websites often need to offer a PDF download. For example, e-commerce sites need to provide a receipt, and online courses need to provide a course completion certificate. But figuring out how to create a PDF has been a challenge. The good news is that Dynamic.ooo, Dynamic Content for Elementor, comes with the ability to create a PDF. In this video, we'll show how to create a form using Elementor Pro, and then how to create a PDF from that form. To create the PDF, we'll use a few features of Dynamic.ooo, the PDF generator feature, which creates the PDF, and the HTML template feature, which controls the layout and style of the PDF contents. If you like the video, please subscribe. It helps us spread the word about the channel. The scenario, what we're going to do here is we're going to pretend that we're creating a form for a university where someone can come to the website and request that information be sent to them depending on what field of study they want to pursue. So that's going to be our scenario, and we'll build a form around that so that we can show some of the different features of Elementor form, but focusing mainly on Dynamic.ooo and the PDF generation. So here I am on a test site, and I'm on the plugins page because I want to show you there are 4 plugins that we need to have installed. We need to have the free version of Elementor, Elementor Core, and then we need to have Elementor Pro installed because we're going to use the Elementor Pro form builder. Then we need to have Dynamic.ooo, and we need to have Timber. Now Timber is a free plugin from the WordPress plugin directory, and you just do add new and type Timber, and it shows up in the list and you can install it. That's easy to get there. So to follow along, you want to have these 4 plugins installed and activated. Okay, now if we go to the Features menu for Dynamic.ooo, Dynamic has so many, look, 81 widgets, 47 extensions, on and on. Okay, we want to go to Extensions, and we want to look at the extensions for Elementor Pro Form. So we're going to need 6 of these turned on, and look, there are 36 enhancements to Elementor Pro Form. That's pretty amazing. All right, so we want to have field description turned on, and to turn them on, you just, that's the toggle. Then we want to have dynamic email if you want to send the PDF in an email, unique ID field, and we'll see these things when we're creating the form. PDF generator, that's to create the PDF. The signature, if you want to allow the user to provide a digital signature. And then conditionals for Elementor Pro form. Okay, so we're going to have a condition that if they check something, then some other fields show. So we'll want that one turned on as well. Okay, and after you make your selection, then you want to be sure and save. All right, so let's go now and create a page. You can give it whatever name you want. In this example, it's not going to show front end to the user. I'm using the free Blocksy theme here. And I want to hide the page title. Blocksy has the option to do that right here. You can disable it. So I'm going to publish it. And a lot of themes have the ability on a page to hide the title. When you go into Elementor, there's another place where you could hide the title if you wanted to do it that way. Okay, so we're in Elementor, and this is where you go to page settings. Okay, and here's the option here to hide the title if you wanted to do that. I'm going to come back to the page settings in a minute, but let's go ahead now and start adding some fields. Okay, so I'm going to start out and add a container, and then going to add an image here at the top. And this is so we can see how to add an image into the PDF. I created an image, just kind of a header image that we can use. So let's go to the section and let's create it full width and have that be 100%. So that's good. And then this image is 1400 pixels by 200 pixels high. Okay, so there's our header image. Then you see how the image has this kind of light blue background color. So I'm going to set the color of the page to that. Obviously you can, style your page however you want. I'm going to go here to the page settings and then to style, classic, and we'll put in a color now. So it'll be the same color as the background of that image, okay? And I'm going to update that. Now let's add another container, and we'll have this be boxed, and we'll make this 1,000 pixels. And in here now, we'll add a heading, and we'll say request for university admission information. And then I'm going to go and set it to be a dark color, and we'll say 20 pixels at the top and 20 at the bottom. Now we're going to add some instructions for our form. So we'll add a text widget and we'll give the user some instructions. Please fill out the form below to request information about our university. A packet will be emailed to you. Okay, so that's a little hard to see. We can give that the darker text color also. And then we can go and make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's easier for a user to see. And maybe on this we have a little bit too much padding there. That looks better. Okay, now let's go ahead and add our form. And you can see what Elementor does here is by default, it gives us like a contact form. Okay, so we can give this a name. Request for information form, that's just for us. Then it has 3 fields here, name, email, and message. So we can get rid of message, we're not going to use that. You've probably seen this before in Elementor. These are like repeaters, we can add another field just by clicking this item. Okay, and we can drag them to move them around. We see here's type, it's a text, the label is name, placeholder is name. The column width is 100%, why don't we make that 50%? Okay, if we look at advanced, it says the ID is name. So that's what we'll need to remember. Then these are items added by Dynamic, and we'll use these in a few minutes, but just to show you, you can add to the label or add a help bubble here next to the label to give some help to the user, and we'll do that in a minute. And then here's where you can add the conditions, and we'll add a condition later on also. Okay, so we made this 50%. Let's make it required. Okay, now let's go to email. And if we make this 50%, then it puts them side by side. So that's cool. And we'll have that be required also. And we want to look, the idea of this field is email. Okay, now we're ready to add our own fields for the form. So let's add a field. And for the type, let's say checkbox. Okay, this is going to be where they pick their major or the topics they're interested in studying. So I'll call this one majors. That's what we call it in the US. I'm just going to paste in a bunch here and see for each item you put it on a new line, it creates a checkbox for us. If we click this inline list, it puts them across like that. All right, so that takes up less space and that's nicer. And if we check just to be sure, see, look, it gave it a default field name, which doesn't mean anything to us. So we want this to be called majors, right? Because that way we can reference it easier and see it automatically updates it down there. Okay, so that's our majors field. Now let's add a new item. And this one, so we can see using a select, drop down. We'll call it financial aid information. Okay, and we'll make this required. And then in the options, we'll have 2 options, no and yes. And it might be a little hard to see, but I've got no and then the bar and then another no, yes, bar, yes. And you can do this because you can show something different in the list than the value that gets saved. Okay, so that's why you would use both there. And you can allow multiple selections, but it doesn't make sense in this case. Okay, let's go now to advanced, and we're going to give this the ID of financial aid. And the default value we're going to say is no. It's going to show that way anyway because we put it in the top, but we'll just do that for the select list. Okay, now let's go here. This will be our help item, and we'll just add some text to it here. It says, please provide exam scores for the academic achievement tests if you would like financial aid. So you have the option here for no description, for on the label, or below the label. That's where this information can show. And see, it created this little help bubble. And when I hover over it with the mouse, then we get the message. So that's an example. You've seen that kind of thing on forms, I'm sure. Okay, so that's our financial aid field. Now we're going to add 3 fields. This is for their test scores. We're saying if you want a scholarship, then, show us your good test scores. So we're going to add 3 columns now. And we'll do text, and the first one will be called literature scores, and we'll make this one 30%. We'll go here, remember we want to make sure the ID matches, so we'll do literature scores. Okay, and then we go to conditional. On conditions, so you have always visible, which is the default, or show if, or hide if. So we're going to say show if financial aid equals YES, yes. So on the front, it's going to show here anyway, but on the front, it should only show if financial aid equals yes. Okay, because this is optional just for the people who want to apply for financial aid. All right, now let's do the same for the next 2. This one will be called mathematics scores. This one will also be 30%. We'll set the ID, and then we're going to have the same condition that we had up here. We're going to say show if financial aid equals yes. Now the last one we're going to add is going to be science scores. Okay, and we'll also make this one 30%. Okay, so they line up across there. Change the ID and set the condition on that one as well. Hey, one cool thing I wanted to show you, we've been adding these conditions, financial aid equals yes, is right here, there's a link to an online conditions generator that they have on the Dynamic.ooo website. So this is kind of nice if you're not used to the correct syntax, what syntax you would use. So this is based on a select field. The name of the field is financial aid. And the value should be equal to, and the value is yes. Okay, look, there's our condition that I pasted in. Okay, so you could just copy this and paste it in there if you weren't sure of the right syntax. That's kind of a cool feature here, and the link to it is right there in the instructions. So we're making some good progress here. Let's just save. I like sometimes to check things as I'm going along. So let's save and go preview this and see if this works. Ah, cool. Okay, so that's working. Let's go back to our form and finish it up. We're getting close here. We want to add another item, another field, and this one's going to be an acceptance field. It's a special Elementor field. It's basically saying you agree to the terms and conditions or the privacy policy or whatever you want to have there. On this one, I'm going to leave the label blank, but we'll have it be required because we want to make sure that people accept the conditions. And then for the text, we'll say, I certify the information is correct. See, so that goes there. If we had added a label, then that would have gone there. And so we want to have that text go there instead. Okay, we go to advanced. I'm going to call this certification. Okay, and then let's add another field. And this one will make a signature field. And we'll give it the label signature. And we'll make it required. And we'll have it saved to a file. We go to here and do signature. And I tell you, when I've worked with Elementor forms, like a typo in the ID or forgetting to change the ID from the default has been the #1 source of problems that you have to go back and fix. So now let's go and style this button a little bit. And let's make it not quite go all the way across. We'll say 1/3. And we'll say send request. Okay. So we've done our button. We could do some validation, like on the form, but I think we're okay on that. We could make it so they can only submit the form once or something. Then there's this actions after submit. So we're telling Elementor, what do we want to do when the form is submitted? So we want to collect the submission. Yep, absolutely. And then the next thing is email. You'd think that we want to do email, but Dynamic.ooo has an advanced email option. That was one of those extensions that we selected. So let's click the X to get rid of email. And now we'll do PDF generator and dynamic email. Okay, so we want to create a PDF and we're going to send an email using the advanced dynamic email option. Okay, now let's go to the PDF generator. There are converters or ways of rendering the PDF, and here's SVG, HTML, and DOM PDF, which they're discouraging using that now. Dynamic.ooo has had several ways of rendering the PDF, and the HTML way is the recommended way because it's the most reliable to get the layout and style the way you want. So that's why we're using that. Then you can set the name of the PDF, and then this is where the PDF is going to be saved. And it's going in under the Uploads folder. There'll be an Elementor folder, and then under that a PDF folder, and then it'll have a year, month, day kind of thing like the way that the media library has. To put the PDFs into folders by the date when they were created. Okay, then you choose the HTML template, but we haven't made the template yet, so we're going to need to come back to this after we make the template and set that here. So we'll come back and finish that in a few minutes. Okay, then we want to add our settings for the emails. So it says new message from Dynamic.ooo. You can change this to be whatever you want. You turn it on. If you have conditions, you set who you want to go to. So I've got David at test.com would be the admin or person it goes to. This is from email and from name. Send as HTML. Okay, and now here's what's going to be in the email. And this is just a short code to dump all the fields from the form into the email. That's fine just for testing. If you were setting this up for a client, you might want to make this fancy. Now there's another short code we can add here. I found this in the documentation for the PDF generator, form::PDF. So that's going to put a copy of the PDF, attach that to the email. That takes care of a lot for us. So now I'm going to update and save what we've done so far. Okay, so we have our form created. We do need to come back and fill in that field in the PDF generator, but we have our form. So we're halfway done now, and that shows us kind of a little bit of a walkthrough on how to create a form in Elementor Pro. Now I'm going to open another tab and we'll go to the admin. Okay, here we are in the admin. We'll go to Dynamic.ooo to this HTML templates menu item, and we'll add a new HTML template. We'll call this University Request Template. Okay, and I'm just going to save that. Okay, and this is going to be then the template that we work with. So there's some things on the page that we can do and refer to. Here is what size paper we want to use. So I'd set a size that matches the size that your users usually use on their printer. You can change it to portrait or landscape. Okay. Then here's information if you want to change the font, have a custom font. This is information about doing that. And it gives you some information here if you're doing right to left language, what you need to do for that. And there is help on all of this in the Dynamic.ooo website. At the end, we'll go and look, to show you where those are. Then they have a little testing area here. what this is, if you don't have a form, but you want to test the template, HTML template, you can put in your form field name first, like name Joe, okay, and then your other variables, and you can click this button here, and it'll render a PDF for you using those variables in this template. But we're not going to do that because we already have a form, but that's just an option if you need to use it. And now over here, it has some information about how to add an image and how to add your signature field. So we'll come back to these when we add the image and signature. Okay, so I like to test as I go along. We've given this a name now, University Request Template. So let's save it. And let's go back to our page, edit it with Elementor. And we go to our form, and remember here for PDF Generator, we didn't select the name of the template. So now that we've given it a name, we can select that, okay, and save. And so now the form is going to use this template we're working on. And here's kind of a cool thing now is that we can start testing our form. It tells us here the form was sent successfully. If there was an error, it would show the error message here, and that doesn't show to users. Now let's go find the PDF and see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to open up my File Explorer here. So here's the name of my testing site is Dynamic WP Content Uploads. Then here's the Elementor folder, and here's the PDF folder. So here's the year, then here's the month, and here's our PDF. Okay, so let's open this. Okay, hi David, your favorite animals are, and then it has this note here about it being a timber template and information about timber. Okay, so it picked up my name, but we can see that we've got some work to do to get this PDF into shape. So I'll leave us at this folder location. Let's go back now to work on the template. Okay, so we see that this is an HTML document. It's similar to a regular web page. So if you're familiar with HTML and CSS, you'll know most of what you need to know to create this here. If not, the good news is it's pretty easy to pick up and you don't have to know everything in order to tweak and set up the PDF. Here we see there is a head section where we have the style and we have our font settings. Okay, then it's got this section for HTML page header. So we could customize this, and you would use this if you had more than one page number, because this is going to say page like 1 of 3 or something like that. And if you don't need that, you can just delete it. And I know that ours will only be 1 page. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that out. But if you wanted to, you could put your company name in there or something like that. Okay, then we have the body. We see here, here's an H1 and a paragraph, and then you see there are these double curly braces and form.name double curly braces. So when we looked at our PDF and it said, hi David, this is the variable from the form that it picked up. And these double curly braces like this, those are used for variables, and this is called twig syntax. Remember we installed the Timber plugin in the beginning. That gives us the ability to use this twig syntax. And twig is a special language. It's part of the Symfony project and a number of WordPress plugins use it. This is not the only one. Okay, and at the bottom of the body, there is a notice here saying this is a Timber template and you can use these expressions. And in the resources links, I'm going to have a link to the twig syntax. It's pretty easy. Like you don't really have to learn it all. You can just look at some examples and apply those for most use cases unless you're doing something really sophisticated. Okay, but let's look at what we've got here. We've got the name, right? But then in their example, it says your favorite animals are, and it has a for loop where it's looping through the names of the animals. And remember at the bottom here, we had some kind of demo testing. It says animals, bar, dog, comma, llama. If we weren't using an Elementor form and we were just testing this, it would loop through the list of animals. All right, but remember, we do have a list also. We have a list of checkboxes about the major, what subject they want to study. So we'll be able to use this syntax to pick up those checkboxes. But first, let's go up here, and to start, let's add in our image. Remember, we have that header image. So I'm going to add a div as a container for it. Okay, and then in the side over here, it gives you an example of how to put an image in. So I'm going to copy that and put it there. So it says an image tag, and then the source is we use this twig syntax file location. Instructions here say we need to get the ID of the image from the WordPress media library. So let's open that in a new tab. And we see here's our building banner. Normally I'd say the media library looks like that, but there's an option to have it in a list also. You can see the ID of the image. It's down in the footer. What it's telling us is the ID is 2787. So let's go back to our template and we're going to change this to 2787. You notice it had that open tag and close tag there. I took those out, okay? You want just the number. Let's just update it. And let's go to our example page, to our PDF form. Okay, it said it was successful. And here's a newer PDF, so another one was created. So let's open that. And there's our image. Great. Okay, so see, we're making progress. Okay, let's go back to our template now. And so let's change the title. Now we've got the header image in. We'll call this request for admission information. And we'll say form.name requested information on, and now we want to put today's date, okay? And so we want to find the twig syntax. How are we going to output today's date? So I'm going to go to Google, twig syntax, today's date. How do you get the current date in twig? Right here. I know that the documentation has this, but I did this just to show you how easy this is, and it's so widely used. There's lots of help and information about it on the web. Okay, so I'm just going to put that in there now. Okay, so request for information. Let's go here. Let's put an ending paragraph here, and it shows us that that matches. And see, this one then is left over and doesn't match. We'll fix that. And then we'll add another paragraph. And we'll say you are interested in the following majors. I'm not sure why it adds that extra 2 spaces there, but it does. All right. I'm going to put a paragraph around UL, that's unformatted list. Okay. So I'm going to put a paragraph at the end of the list. All right, now for animal in form raw animals, we don't need that. What we need is for major. And this is just our variable name here. You could put like X in there if you wanted to. Okay, in form raw majors. And then we want major, our variable. So let's go and test this now and see how we're doing. I like to test as I'm going along, so if there's an error, then we pick it up right away and we know right where the error was because it would be where we were just working. David at example.com. And now hopefully this time we'll get some majors in our PDF. Okay, it was successful. Here's the most recent one. Hi, you're interested in the following majors: computer science, literature. Awesome, so this is working. That's really great. Okay, now let's finish this up. Let's go back to the template now. Now we want to get that financial aid information. I think we can take this part about the twig out. Okay, but we want to do now the financial aid information. And so now we're going to need to do a twig if statement. And one thing I want to show you, see how the variable has two curly brackets? See, form.name has two curly brackets, but the command, the for loop, just has one and the percent sign. We're going to add one curly bracket, percent sign, and we're going to say if form.financial aid equal yes, it's that same condition, and then the percent sign and the curly bracket. Then we want to say you expressed interest in financial aid and reported your test scores as, okay. Then I want to have a div here for each of the variables of the test scores. Okay, so I'm going to say literature and then form.literature scores, and I'll copy that, and we'll do mathematics, form.mathematics scores, and then science, form.science scores. And then we're going to do our end if. And remember, you can Google it, but there's also the resource link to the twig syntax. This should output our test scores. So let's go and test that. Okay, this time I'm going to say, yes, I want financial aid. And we'll say 95 and 85 and 90. Okay, here are my scores. Check that and we'll send the request. And it worked. And here's the PDF. Let's see how that looks. Okay, you expressed interest and reported these test scores. We don't have the mathematics score. We've got a problem. Let's go fix that. Let's see, what did we type for mathematics? Did we type that wrong? MATHEMATICS, mathematics scores. I'm just going to open this in a new tab. We'll go in. Okay, now remember we were talking about this. I said most of the time when there's an issue, it's that you have this wrong. And look, I have no S here, okay, but here I have that with an S, so I spelled it differently. So now that should be fixed. Okay, so let's update and try that again. And I'm showing you this as we go along, you know, these things, because it's normal to have an issue and you just have to try to troubleshoot it. And it's not a big deal. If you've done any kind of programming, you know there'll be issues here and there. So, okay, now we've got all three scores. Wouldn't it be nice to have the scores go in a row across instead of down? Well, the good news is that in the help docs for Dynamic, they have a help doc on this PDF generator, the HTML converter. See, this is all the stuff that we've been going through. And right here it says if you have multiple columns, you can add this CSS into the style section. So let's go and do that. Up here in style, we'll add the CSS. And we see what it's saying. It's saying width 50%. But the instructions say you can have 2 columns would be 50%, but if you want 3 columns, then change that to 33%. Okay, so we're just going to change that 50 to 33, saying we want 3 columns. And then we need to add a class to our divs. Okay, so this is called multi-column, so we need to add that class multi-column. It's just a little CSS there. So let's go down to our divs, and we'll add that. Okay, then I think this is going to come out now in 3 columns. I'm not going to bother testing this now. We'll check it in a minute. Let's go ahead and finish this up though, because I think the only thing we need to add now is our signature field. That's the only field left. I'm just going to put a new line in there, And now we'll go over here and it gives instructions for getting the signature. Okay, form signature field ID. So we know the ID is just called signature. And there's a little thing here, it should say form underscore raw because it's an image file. Then we'll add another line. Let's finish off with a nice message for the user, and we'll say the requested information will be emailed out within 5 working days. Thank you. Okay, let's go save this now and go test it out. Okay, I want computer science and literature. And yes, I need a scholarship, please. Add my test scores. And send the form. Okay, now look, we have this thing here. We're going to open the PDF in a minute. But my little local testing environment shows me the emails that are sent out. And remember, this is just dumping out the form fields, that email template, the dynamic email. See, so there are form fields. And this is a link to the signature file. But here's an attachment PDF. All right, so this is what our final is going to look like. David requested information on June 1st. You're interested in computer science and literature. You reported these test scores. Here's your signature, and it'll be emailed out to you. Okay, so our PDF is done, and it was even included in the email. So that's awesome. And see, this is the PDF that was in the email. So I wanted to share the resources available on the text version of the video here on the Elementor 360 website, e360.co. There's the companion article. Here we have the HTML template source code that you can copy. And here we have the resources. There's a link to the condition generator. There are links to articles in the Dynamic.ooo documentation area. Here's the link for the PDF generator, for the HTML converter, for how to add a custom font, if you want to use a custom font with the HTML converter. Here's the official Twig documentation. And finally, here's the Timber documentation. Okay, so there are a lot of resources available on the website as well. Now we've done the walkthrough part. There's a little bit of concluding discussion. In this tutorial, we use the Elementor Pro forms together with the Dynamic.ooo extensions for the PDF generator, the conditions, signature, unique ID, field description, and dynamic email. Those are just 6 of the 36 extensions for Elementor Pro forms that come with Dynamic.ooo. And you can see the extensions bring a lot of professional functionality and polish. They really round out the features of the Elementor Pro forms. Creating the form and the HTML templates, it isn't just drag and drop. These are power tools and they require a little extra effort. The good news is that the Dynamic.ooo extensions are well documented, and we have the ability using Elementor to create a PDF. As I've mentioned, there's a text version on the Elementor 360 website, along with other walkthroughs, reviews, and resources. I hope you found the video helpful. Thank you for watching.